I have, because Ramona really doesn't like me, she's given me the chore of starting the first meeting where we start at 12:05 and we start with the buffet line, meaning we have total chaos today. And it's probably going to take a couple meetings to get this totally straightened out, but we will get it straightened out. But it's a little exciting right now, but we're going to have to start the meeting because we have a fantastic program today. My name is Beth Paget. And so an official welcome to this August 10th meeting of the Rotary Club of Greenville. And so we're going to go ahead and get started. If you'll join me first in the invocation and then the pledge. Creator of the universe, we are thankful for this day and all of its blessings and opportunities. Please guide and direct our Rotary Club and all Rotary leaders during this new year. Keep us aware of our responsibility to others and to our own community and to the world. May we always do our best in serving others, and may we always seek to leave this world a little better than we found it. Bless this fellowship today. Bless our food and those who grew it and prepared it. Amen. If you'll join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands. Thank you. Be seated. One short thing before we do get started with the regular program. President Ramona has given me just an extra minute to recognize one of our Greenville Rotarians who has gotten an extraordinary promotion in the world of Rotary. Most of you, if you've been in our Rotary Club, let's say 5 minutes, know Terry Weaver. You know the hard work that he does for our club. He is always good at doing stuff behind the scenes and is a great presenter. So you know how hard he works for our Rotary Club. If you have any exposure on the district level, you know that Terry does the same amount of work for Rotary District 7750. And he does an extraordinary job as trainer and all those behind the scene things. If you have just a little bit of exposure to the zone level, you know that Terry does the same amount of work at the zone level. Don't know where he finds the time. It could be that he stays up till 3 a.m. every morning. But Terry has gotten a tremendous promotion in Rotary. Starting July 1, he is going to be Rotary Coordinator for Zone 33. Now you may say, that sounds impressive, but I have no idea what it means. This is what it means. Zone 33 has 17 districts that, Zone 33 has 17 districts that run from Western Pennsylvania all the way down through the 2 districts in South Carolina. In those 17 districts, there are almost 1,000 Rotary clubs. In those 1,000 Rotary clubs, there are a little more than 35,000 Rotarians. 35,000 Rotarians, almost 1,000 Rotary clubs, 17 districts, a huge chunk of the Atlantic seaboard. So Terry will be in charge starting July 1 for a 3-year appointment for everything related to membership in our zone, membership development, helping clubs get out of the rut if they're having trouble recruiting members, working with clubs to start innovative club models, all those things related to membership. So just wanted you to know that I think that this is probably the highest one of our club members have ever gone in Rotary. The zone is right below Rotary International Board of Directors. And so this is an extraordinary promotion. It recognizes Terry's talents, his expertise, that he is the hardest worker you will ever find. And so if you would join me in congratulating Terry on this tremendous promotion. Thank you, Terry. Good luck. And don't forget your home club.
Good afternoon. I'm Lorraine Holm, and I'd like to welcome our guests today. If you are in line or eating, please just wave. You don't need to stand up as we're trying to get through to the main part of the meeting. Our guest today is Kay Wade, guest of Paul Finelli. Larry Murphy, guest of Marie Murphy. Stephen Grisbowski, guest of Chris Nordmeyer. Maggie Klegger, guest of Ryan Thackeray. Jaden Beek, guest of the club. Jamise Bonaparte, guest of the club. Michael Blum, guest of the club. Andrea Smith, guest of the club. Frederick Turner, guest of Jane Dyer. Loretta Stevens, guest of Scott Stevens. Taylor Keeter, guest of Christine DeMint. And David Dykes, guest of Michael Evans. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Good afternoon, Rotarians. Ryan Thackeray here today to deliver the member news for August the 10th, 2021. Today's member news is presented by the South Carolina Historical Society. Established in 1855, Bert Strange was there and remembers it. The South Carolina Historical Society is dedicated to expanding, preserving, and making accessible our invaluable historical collection and encouraging interest and pride in the rich history of our state. The collection of over 2 million items spans the 300-year history of our entire state, with records from early exploration, the colonial era, the antebellum plantation era, the Civil War, and 20th century industrialization. Their records are used by scholars, genealogists, and authors throughout the world because they are recognized as exceptional resources for understanding the formation and development of South Carolina, as well as the United States. The SCHS is headquartered in the Fireproof Building, a National Historic Landmark located in the heart of Charleston, South Carolina. Hey, make a plan to visit next time you're in Charleston, or give them a call if you're interested in a particular topic of South Carolina history. And if you're interested in learning more, Rotarian Scott Stevens is a part of the team, and I'm sure would love to tell you more. Thanks to the South Carolina Historical Society for sponsoring today's member news. And just don't forget, if you or someone you know is interested in sponsoring member news, we're running a deal for the month of September, half off of what we charged Scott, which was $0. Some more news for you. Brand new member and Rotarian Laura Tesh has some exciting news to share. Her daughter, Kate Tesh, recently won the NCFCA Moot Court National Championship. Laura notes that while this news isn't her accomplishment, that she does take some credit as she was her daughter's homeschool teacher. And today she's moving into Clemson. And I think that there's probably gonna be several arguments that your daughter may win over the next several years as the Moot Court National Champion. So good luck with that one. Our club made it in the GVL Today publication recently as our Service Above Self Scholar, Lena, was highlighted. Congrats again to Lena, and proud of the club for being highlighted in this special way. And congrats to Chris Nordmeyer and Allie Van Dyke of our club for being selected to participate in the next Leadership Greenville class. And this should be interesting. By show of hands, how many folks in here have participated in Leadership Greenville before? Oh, look at Carlos looking proud right there. I see you, Carlos. Go ahead. We are proud to have lots of Rotarians in this club that are graduates of Leadership Greenville and many future graduates, I'm sure, to come. Just final news here. The Rush Wilson family has grown. Jay Wilson and his wife, Amelia, recently had a baby girl, Amelia Wilson. I am sure her father and grandfather of Rush Wilson Limited downtown will be very critical of any of the clothes Amelia's boyfriend wears here in the future. So good luck to those guys. And a retirement announcement. Somebody get Brody Bricker to join their committee with his newfound free time. Dr. Brody Bricker, club member since 1988, retired on June the 30th for what he says is the 5th and final time after 53 years in education. He served 52 of those 53 years in school administration. And congrats to Bert Strange and his family. Bert's daughter was recently ordained. Again, Bert told me this was his daughter's news and not his, but I give Bert some credit for raising her. So congrats to his daughter on being ordained recently. And that's your member news for today, for August. And we look forward for more member news. Please share it with me, ryan.thackeray@tnc.org, and we'll make sure we highlight your member news in September. Thanks so much. And the final news, I'm reading off my phone here because my home office printer wasn't working. Imagine that. The Weston Poinsett wants to thank all Rotarians who voted in the Greenville News Best of the Upstate survey. Thanks to your support and the support of our community, the Weston, again, to no surprise, has won Best Hotel of the Upstate. Congratulations to Fabian and his entire crew here at the Weston Poinsett in downtown Greenville, South Carolina.
In the fall of 2016, a very shy, quiet 11th grader from Greer Middle College showed up in my Religions of the World class that I was teaching at the Benson or Greer campus, Greenville Tech. By the end of the term, she managed somehow to squeak by with a 95 average, ruined my reputation. About 15 months later, the same young lady, now a senior at Greer Middle College, showed up on a Sunday afternoon to interview for the Rotary Club of Greenville's Service Above Self Scholarship. She blew us out of the water, not only with her academic credentials, but with her poise and her charm. That young lady was and is Abigail Smith, now set to begin her 4th year at Furman. She is a religion major, undoubtedly due to the great influence I had on her. Minoring in what we used to call classics, she describes it as ancient Greek and Roman studies. She's also a Tocqueville Fellow, which is a big deal. It's part of an intellectual community at Furman that seeks to find all the truth about moral and philosophical questions at the heart of political life. One of her side gigs at Furman is to serve as the program director for Catholic Campus Ministry at Furman. And of course, she's active doing a lot of community service as a volunteer, and she's going to talk about some of that. It's interesting to refresh my memory a bit. I went back and looked at the file that Abigail submitted for her interview. Yes, you can store a lot of useless information on your computer. And I was reminded of some things about her I'd forgotten. She is an accomplished writer. She won in her high school days a number of state and national awards for creative writing. She also sings, plays piano and violin, and plays tennis. And just so you know, she also does Taekwondo, so don't mess with it. But she is what I would certainly call a well-rounded young woman whose poise, charm, academic excellence, leadership, and heart for service to others have only increased in the 5 years that I've known her. So fellow Rotarians and guests, it's my honor and pleasure to present our 2018 Service Above Self Scholar, Abigail Smith.
Thank you, Dr. Strange. It feels like it has been such a long time since I was last here in front of you guys. And as I prepared to talk to you today, I was reflecting once again on what a strange time these last few years have been. But even in the midst of a global pandemic, life goes on. So I am here to give an update on my life and my work that was made possible because of your generous help. Last year, I told you about the Veritas Forum that I was planning. Veritas Forum is a nonprofit that brings students and professors together to talk about the big questions that we face today from a variety of perspectives. The forum that we planned was called Beyond Tolerance, Engaging Religious Differences. I am pleased to report that we had amazing success with this forum, with over 200 students and community members in attendance. It was wonderful to see such a great response, especially during COVID. And if you're interested, you can see the recorded discussion on YouTube on the Veritas Forum channel. I am currently serving, as Dr. Strange said, as the program director of the Catholic Campus Ministry at Furman, and I am a member of the Tocqueville Fellows, an honor society that explores political philosophy and its practical implications for us today. I also told you a little bit last year about my work with the Love and Fidelity Network, an organization based out of Princeton University whose mission is to restore relationships in a variety of ways. One of these ways is to offer an alternative to hookup culture, which is prevalent and promoted on college campuses. I started working with them last year when I created a curriculum called Be Somebody to Somebody. This curriculum explores forming relationships and developing virtues, and it will be used by students at universities across the country. During the spring, we pilot tested this curriculum with student leaders from Princeton, Notre Dame, Georgetown, and Yale. This summer, I was delighted to be invited back to work with them again. I revised and I updated my first course using the feedback we received on the pilot group. And I also began work on another course about friendship. We're also growing the organization through developing a student-authored blog that I have contributed to. Additionally, I have become a presenter with Family Honor, a nonprofit organization that helps parents and their children learn about love, virtue, and living a full life in all its spice, or spiritual, physical, intellectual, creative, and emotional parts of life. Through my service with the Love and Fidelity Network and Family Honor, I have really found what I am most passionate about. We often hear talk about the problem of loneliness in America. In fact, the Surgeon General declared it an epidemic in 2014. And COVID has only further highlighted and exacerbated this problem. The people who suffer most from this epidemic of loneliness are senior citizens, and surprisingly, young people my age. This is concerning considering this group in our community is often surrounded by other people, but even in the midst of a crowd, they feel alone. Suicide rates are climbing all the time, and most often people are driven to suicide because of deep despair and loneliness. We live in the most materially advantaged time in the world, yet people are literally dying of loneliness. Why is this happening? What's going wrong? It seems it's becoming more and more difficult to make real friends and develop deep connections. Our world is becoming increasingly connected through technology, but at the same time, we are becoming less and less connected from each other. I have noticed a deep sense of anxiety about relationships among my peers. We do not really know how to connect with each other. Technology and social media shortens our attention spans and trains us to favor shallow, quick sound bites, rather than going through the messy and difficult work of loving. We can see this play out in the political sphere as we get more and more polarized and less able to understand another's perspective. Along with this is the sexualization of our culture that makes real friendship harder. I have male friends who struggle to form friendship with other men because the depth and intimacy required for true connection is not seen as masculine. It is also difficult for men and women to form non-romantic relationships because we have narrowed the definition of love, so it can only mean something erotic, effectively stripping away our ability to deeply know and love our friends. Instead, we are limited to friendships of pleasure and utility, friendships which help us along and are fun for a time, but do nothing to fill the deepest holes in our hearts. And we are becoming steadily more transactional. Hookup culture is a good example of this. We use one another, forgetting the beautiful dignity of every human person. Aristotle describes us as political animals. He means by this that we are naturally communal. We are made to be in relationship with others. Through my work with the Love and Fidelity Network, I seek to help students like me to be able to form friendships, to develop the virtues needed to live in political community, to disconnect in order to reconnect. These ideas are a kind of culmination of my thinking about love and marriage and friendships, and what I want to continue to work on this next year and hopefully beyond graduation. This upcoming year will be my last at Furman. I could not have done any of this without your support, and I am very grateful to you all at the Greenville Rotary Club. It is not only by your scholarship, but also by your values that I have been able to do all of this. By my work, I seek what is true, what is fair to all. I want to build goodwill and better friendships, and to be truly beneficial to my community. Thank you so much, Rotary, for your work and for your witness to me and your service to others. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Rotary family. How are you? Good. So I've got a little icebreaker event. Actually, I and my co-chair, she's on the call, but a little under the weather. So Allie couldn't be with us in person. Allie Van Dyke, she's the DEI committee co-chair. And we have designed a little exercise. And it's to have you, for the purpose of thinking more inclusively and thinking about DEI. All right. So here we go. The instructions, if you care to read them, are there's one page turned face down on your table, but I'm going to read them aloud for those. Oh, yeah. All right. More alike than different. A diversity and inclusion exercise. What do we have in common? This is the question. We all know what we don't have in common. We can look at each other and tell that, right? That's simple, basic stuff. But what do we have in common? Everyone is to get in groups at your table. You don't have to get up for this. You don't have to stand. That's inclusive too, because some of us are in wheelchairs and some of us are, not as mobile as we once were. So with the idea of inclusivity in mind, we'll remain at our tables. And I want you to just discuss amongst yourselves and take 3 minutes, just 3 minutes, 5 things that cannot be job related or obvious that you have in common with the folks at your table. So there can't be things like, we're all women or we're all wearing Rotary blue. Good examples are we're all born in the same city, or we all have 2 siblings, or all were born in July. All were past, oh my God, I'm so intimidated that Carlos Phillips is sitting here today, okay? Let me just put it out there. Michelle put me at that table next to him. I can't form the words. Anywho, you get the gist. So the 5 things must be things that require communication in order to establish. All right, so when time is called, after we'll go around the room, share what we learned we have in common with our table mates. And we'll make it more fun by giving away a few giveaways. I've got a couple of gift cards for Mass General, 2 $25 gift cards. And then the third gift or giveaway will be the rest of that beautiful basket there. So, and I think Lisa Minnick had contributed that at the Rotary conference. It was meant to, somebody did? Okay, somebody. All right, so let's get to it. 3 minutes on the clock. Find out 5 things you have in common with your table mates. All right, folks. It's time to share.
Thank you, guys.
All right, so who wants the 5 things that they and their table mates have in common? Marie. All right, what you got?
We all have children. We all went to college. We have all served on nonprofit boards. We all like to vacation at the beach. And we have all traveled abroad.
Yes, thank you. Who else? That gentleman right there. Ooh, sorry. Coming up.
Thanks. A lot of the same ones here, but we all have children. We all have siblings. We've all lived here in Greenville for more than 15 years. We all are college graduates, and we can all drive a manual transmission car.
Thank you, good sir. Good stuff. One more. I saw this young lady first.
We're going from basic to good. We all have parents. We've all had pets. We've all been on a health challenge. We've all flown, registered to vote, have a driver's license, shelter, food, and clothing. We've all traveled internationally, and we all watched the Olympics.
Woohoo! Thank you, young lady. All right. Thank you, everybody, for participating. That's good stuff. All right. Next thing.
What about the
I want
Zoom?
to close with a poem written by a friend of mine up in Asheville, Karen
I'm
Madison.
not sure they can hear us.
I would have printed it
so-
out and made it available to you, but she's about to be published and doesn't want her printed work out there for the world just yet. This particular poem is called Willing. Like many of the poems Karen has shared with me, she's written a poem a day for at least 6 years, and I've known her the last 3. That's a lot of sharing. But it was inspired by and begins with a quote by someone she admires or reveres, or someone she's discovered while reading and studying and walking and hiking. She doesn't own or watch television, so much of her time is meditative, contemplative, reflective. But here's the poem with an opening by Mark Nepo. To listen is to lean in softly with a willingness to be changed by what you hear. Mark Nepo. Now here's Karen's poem, Willing. Let me listen. Let me not know what to say. Let me receive the world as it slurs and shrieks, hums and whispers, speaks and bleats. Let me lean ever closer in. There are walls I've built in my ears. There's so much I would rather not hear. Let me listen. Let me receive with wonder. Let all be worthy of note. Let me be a witness, eavesdropper, spy. Let me never pretend to be deaf. Let the world slip into me and change me as light changes a room. Let me be silent. Let me listen, and in listening, let me be new. So why did I share with you a poem about listening? Because to be inclusive requires listening, not in the way we typically listen, taking in just enough to lunge back with our clever response, our well-crafted retort as soon as it's our turn to speak. That is, if we wait rather than speak over the other person. Last week at the lunchtime conversation session that Teresa Miller hosts the first Tuesday of each month, shameless plug for lunchtime conversations, the topic was restorative justice. Restorative justice is based in ancient practices of indigenous peoples of the Americas. It prioritizes the experiences and needs of the victim, and those who have caused harm take ownership of their actions and meet with those they've harmed. For the exercise, one of the instructions Teresa provided to us on the call was to be curious and to listen to understand. We weren't allowed to respond to a person's comment. We could only listen. And because we're not having to formulate a clever retort, we were able to listen for the sole purpose of hearing and to absorb the person's words and the emotion attached to those words. And we could imagine his or her experience and place ourselves in her shoes, all by merely listening. So Karen's poem that I read for you is relevant because listening requires you to be mindful of others, and it requires you to be fully present, and it allows you to bear witness to another person's lived experience. That's it. Think of some of the lines of the poem. Let me not know what to say. Let me lean ever closer in. Let me receive with wonder. Let me never pretend to be deaf. Let me be silent. When you listen for the sake of listening only, you don't have to agree, you don't have to concede, you don't have to argue. You get to hear. Thank you.
We have an incredible panel lined up for today. I learned earlier that all of them are very similar to us in that they have siblings, they watch the Olympics, Almost all of them would prefer to vacation at the beach versus the mountains, and some other fun things. I really am excited about this panel today. It includes Pastor Sean Dogan, who is the pastor of Long Branch Baptist Church and the interim president and CEO of the Urban League. Tracy Fries, who is the executive director of Upstate International. Adela Mendoza, who is executive director of the Hispanic Alliance. And Carlos Phillips, who is the president and CEO of the Greenville Chamber, will be moderating our panel to help us learn more about what is being done in our community in terms of diversity and inclusion and how we individually as Rotarians and as a club can be more engaged in this effort. So without further ado,
Chris, thank you for having us today, and thank you, Rotarians, for giving us the opportunity to have this conversation with you. I want to thank Abigail for her powerful message. That was beautiful. Thank you so much. Chantel, thank you for reading that beautiful poem. And for Ryan, I'm going to start wearing my hair like you. All right, let's jump right in. We're going to try our best to pack 10 pounds of potatoes into a 5-pound bag today. Usually discussions about diversity, equity, and inclusion. They include a lot of different perspectives. Oftentimes, we're all starting at different places in our diversity, equity, and inclusion journey. But we're going to just share with you our perspectives today. I want to thank Tracy, Adela, and Pastor Dogan for joining us today. And let's just jump right in. And as I ask these questions of the panel, I want to encourage you to ask the same questions of yourselves and answer the question to yourself as well. And we save a little time at the end for some questions from you. So we'll start with Tracy. Tracy, what does diversity, equity, and inclusion mean to you?
Thank you. I'm a little loud anyway, so I'll try to tone it down. I grew up in Alaska, and I did not understand the problems of diversity awareness, and equities until I moved to South Carolina. And a lot of people think that's odd, but I was raised on a military base with people from many cultures, and it just wasn't a topic. And when I moved to South Carolina 8th grade, it kind of hit me in the face that there was a diversity problem. It was moving into a whole nother culture to come to South Carolina. Luckily, these days, working with Upstate International, I have come to find diversity to be a much broader topic than Black, White, Asian, Hispanic. We do a training called Global Fluency, and through it, I started studying the Hofstede cultural dimensions, the dimensions of cultures. And what does diversity really mean? Well, today it means to me that anyone who's not me. So when I look at diversity, it's any person other than myself is the other. And the other means that they have been raised differently. Their experiences are different. Their religion may be different. How they look may be different. But really, it's an understanding that my mindset does not translate to everyone else. So I can't expect them to agree with me or to assume things aren't acceptable like I do. And it was very eye-opening to look at how other cultures rate important qualities in how they live, whether it's the difference in power levels, power structures among society, how they tolerate each other's religious choices, how they tolerate sexuality or living conditions, and most certainly what economics plays into it. So I think diversity awareness to us has become at Upstate International really a focus on how do we celebrate the differences among everyone and really bring attention to the opportunities that has given our region. I mean, Greenville is what it is today because of the amazing diversity here and the fact that it impacts economically our bottom line in everything we do. We have the highest percentage of our population in the US employed by foreign-owned companies of anywhere. Los Angeles, New York, other places don't have that same impact from international business coming in. And that international business has brought beautiful diversity with it. So given last year with the rise in tensions among race in the US, we took another look at what we do, and we really wanted to look at the diversity that we were not focusing on. And that was, are we reaching our underserved populations? Is our board, is our staff, is our outreach mirroring what we believe in? Are we being more aware that some of our African American populations or our Hispanic populations may not have the opportunity to engage globally that everyone else has? So hopefully through training, Greenville's 21-day equity challenge, we had a wonderful young woman, Raquel Harris, who came and led an unconscious bias training for our board and our staff and our volunteers. And through those other areas, then we hope to kind of help bridge that gap between international diversity, diversity issues locally, and what each of us can do to really change how we think about the other. Is that good? That's good for me.
Well, first of all, thank you all for having us. And thank you, Carlos, for the question. You know, diversity, equity, and inclusion definitely has a meaning. And we all can share what that meaning is to us. I believe it's more of a methodology. So I believe that diversity, equity, and inclusion is allowing me to show up and be accepted and respected by who I am and what I bring to the table. And I think if we do that and we use that for our methodology and how we do that, I believe we'll have diversity and inclusion. You know, if I have to show up and know that I am being judged, critiqued, or even measured by something that I have no idea what it is, it does not allow me to show up as the real me and all of me. So I think diversity, equity, and inclusion deals with allowing people to show up and be themselves, accept and respect them for that.
There is very little to add to that, but one thing that I'll say is that as I think, so we're entering a change world, right? Whether we like it or not. And I think that we have the blessing of perspective of last year. And I think that we are in a unique moment in our history where we have this opportunity to really pause and think of what are the lessons from last year that we have to hold on to, right? I mean, it's easy to go back to normal. It's easy to go back to doing business as usual. But I think that we cannot miss this opportunity to really listen to one another and to start moving our perspectives or expanding our perspectives so that the other is not the other. And I think that's the key here, right? I think including new people is the first step, but expanding our perspectives is what really will make the difference. It doesn't matter if I bring you to the table. If I'm not willing to expand my perspective and really listen to you and really let you show up as you are. So I think I'm just so grateful that we are having these conversations. This is certainly the beginning.
Thank you, Adela. Stuffing potatoes. My past Rotary experience informs me of what happens around here at 1 o'clock. So we're going to keep this moving along. And this question we'll leave with Adela. What is the current state of diversity, equity, inclusion nationally and locally? What are your thoughts on that? And you know I'm going somewhere with that question.
That's a very big question. I wouldn't expect less of you. I think that's a very broad question, and it goes back to what I was mentioning before. We're living in a very unique moment, and I'm sure that if you work for a company, your company hopefully is engaging in DEI initiatives, conversations, probably implementing programs. If you are not, I will encourage you to challenge that and to start doing it. But I think that the awakening that happened to us in terms of the racial injustices that our Black communities across the nation are experiencing, it's a good thing that we're awakening to that, but we need to understand that that change has been happening for a long time, that those injustices probably we have tolerated for too long. And I think it's important that we really embrace the idea that what impacts you impacts me. There is no such a thing as you are on your own, and as long as I'm okay, I don't care about the world. I don't think that we have the luxury of doing that anymore. And when we look at the last 20 years and the demographic change that is happening in the US, gives us insight into how the world is changing. And when we think about the US, so I figured that it would be a good idea to provide some just general numbers so that we all know what we're talking about. So currently in the US, 60% of our population is white. 18.5 is Hispanic, 13.4 is Black, 5.9 Asian, and then other. But when you look at the population growth, the Asian population has been growing 89%, Hispanic 72%, Black 29%, and white 13%. There is a very good study by Brookings that projects that by 2045, for the first time in our history, the white population will be less than 50%. To be exact, it's going to be 49%. Hispanics will make up 24% of our population, Black 13%, Asian 7.9%, and then other. So just think about it for a moment. Diversity is all around us. Diversity is not a choice. Diversity is not a foreign concept. Diversity is anyone other than me. I love your definition, and I'm going to start borrowing that, Tracy. But also diversity is a reality and is a richness, the cultural richness that exists all around us. And the question really goes back to our individual responsibility to one another. What am I going to do to ensure that my community, the table in which I sit when I go to a party, the people that I invite into my home gets closer to this? So I think that ultimately we need to be thinking about personal responsibility. The changing culture is an asset to our communities. It's an asset to our culture, an asset to our companies. And I think that when we start from that individual perspective, we facilitate the change that needs to happen at the corporate level, at the legislative level, et cetera.
Thank you, Adela. And we're going to keep the mic down here for a moment because I want to shine the light on something that Adela did not. And it's related to the question about where we are locally with diversity, equity, and inclusion. I think we're further along than Greenville than sometimes we give ourselves credit for. And that was never more apparent than with the recent occurrence regarding the wings of Greenville. We had a vocal and active minority. I hope they were in the minority that opposed that initiative. And it affected some funding decisions in our community that had negative impact on the Wings of Greenville initiative. But I read yesterday that as a result of the vocal minority, 466 donors contributed over $60,000 to the Wings of Greenville initiative, far exceeding the over $7,000 that the county council took away from the Wings of Greenville initiative. Many of you in this room supported that initiative. Adela, thank you for your leadership, and thank you and others in this community for demonstrating Greenville's progress in diversity, equity, and inclusion. All right, Pastor Dogan, you got about 6 or 7 seconds to talk about the Ream Commission.
Before I talk about Ream, I just want to say with the data that Adela set forth, Carlos and his lovely wife need to have more Black children because the Black population is staying the same. So Ream stands for the Racial Equity and Economic Mobility Commission. And it was started last summer when a phone call came to myself and to Carlos from Megan Bart, just asking us, how are we doing? It was right after the murder of George Floyd, and we felt as though we needed to do something. And so we put out a white paper just expressing our feelings and our hope for support with race equity issues. And when we looked at it, it wasn't just race equity issues, but it was this lack of upward economic mobility for African Americans or for the Black community. To be totally honest with you, it was our hope that that Greenville or one of the municipalities or the county would kind of grab it and go with it, and that did not happen. They put it right back in our laps, and so therefore we gave a lot of thought to bringing together many leaders of our community, around 30 leaders of our community that would really focus on the developing strategies and partnerships to eradicate disparities and injustices and inequities amongst or concerning the Black community. And we knew that being bold by saying just the Black community, that it would stir up some conversations. And it was not that other communities were not important, but when we look at the statistics and when we look at the data, disproportionately, African Americans are affected the most. And so it needed to be stated, it needed to be dealt with, and happy to say that we're at a point now that those different groups are coming together in just the next couple of days to give the first reading of strategies dealing with health and wellness, criminal justice, and there are other education, thank you, education. And then also coupling that and kind of wrapping that around some community learning opportunities. One in particular will be coming up the first weekend of October that we hope that the community will really support. It will be at the Greenville Drive Stadium with speakers and with activities. And then also other opportunities for the community to come together to not only learn of the issues, but to have what you all say here, to really focus, know, talk about, and say and do the truth. Because a lot of times we have opinions and we have perspectives, but it's not the full truth. And so we really want to just lay out the truth. And even as Tracy has mentioned before, that this has, and this is workforce, economic and workforce as well, but it has an economic undertone to this. And so we want to magnify that and also hopefully give strategies and remedies that we'll be working on, I'm sure, for a long time.
And I had about 13 questions to ask, but time is nigh. So I'll just get to the very, very end. Are there any questions from the audience that you have about diversity, equity, and inclusion? Any questions you have for the panelists? But I really think, again, that unfortunately there's a vocal minority that's making their voice heard. I think most of us are much further along than that. Maybe I'm naive. I think we have to continue to be the example that we want to see in other people. I think we have to be cognizant of how we go about living our lives. You know, who do we interact with? Who do we surround ourselves with? Who do we include at our table? Who do we invite to our homes for dinner? Think about it. When's the last time you had somebody over for dinner at your home that was pre-COVID, okay, that was starkly different from you? Or look at your social media. Look at your Facebook. Does everyone on your Facebook page look like you, think like you, feel the same way that you do? I mean, there are some things that we can do consciously to change it. Clearly, it's not going to happen overnight. We've been at this thing for quite some time. You know, I'll say 400 or so years trying to figure this out. But I think most of us have the will to do it, and we just got to keep pushing along.
I have two simple things that I think everybody can do. Number one is don't be silent. And number two, be an ally. And what true allyship means is if I'm at the table if I'm invited to a board, if I'm invited to a commission, and there is a Black person at the table that people are deciding what Black communities need to be doing, it is my responsibility as a non-Black person to speak up and to be that ally that ensures the decisions are not being made for an entire population without that population having representation. At the Hispanic Alliance, we're focusing on the next generation of leaders. What does that mean? We may not have representation currently, but in 10 years, our population is changing, and our children have to be ready to serve at those tables. But that doesn't mean that they're only serving the voice of the Hispanic community. That means that if we teach them well, they need to be guided by their values, by their moral compass, and say something is wrong, what is wrong, and say who is not at the table if we have the access to that table.
I am thinking about the fact that children, young children, don't recognize diversity as an issue. The kindergartner sees my Black friend or my brown friend or my friend with the, however they describe them. And I think the classrooms and raising the next generation, those kids these days come home and teach us every day. I know my children learn way more than I expect in school and bring it home. I think we need to, one thing we can tangibly do is empower our teachers to build good classroom environments that help celebrate that diversity. Right now, our Greenville County School District, our teachers, other than the English as a second language teachers, receive zero cultural training to help support them in the classroom. One thing we've been working on is a global fluency initiative for K-12 educators, specifically to help those teachers learn how to work across cultures, including our local cultures, so that they build a better relationship with the student and the family, and then that carries over to student. But I think sometimes you're not going to change that person today who just can't take diversity as a good thing. I do kind of personally, though, like to remind people, you know, we're a melting pot. I'm a white woman. Well, guess what? I'm a lot Cherokee, and you'd never see it. And I have 2 African Americans in my family, and you'd never see it. So I think being that example, but also remembering that even if we can't change that person, we may change his son or daughter, and fostering that, you know, in our youth to move it along.
I would just like to say that there is an urgency for it, and that to ignore the urgency for it would not be wise. There's a generation that is coming up that the sit down and talk and get to know your neighbor, that's good for us, but that's not the message that they have amongst themselves. And it is a uncontrolled urgency that we have to figure it out. You mentioned, I think those who feel that way, if I could just be very, very transparent, I don't know many Black people who don't want diversity to take place or inclusion to take place. There may be some, and for I'm sure reasons, but the majority is not those who look like me. Those who are holding up progress, I would say that if anyone has influence with that population, with that group, to really talk to them and really give the case, not just the heart case or the empathetic case, but the case of economics, the case of, you know, we really are better, and the progression, because without it, I see a sense of urgency that if the fire is lit, we've seen it other places, and I don't think Greenville is immune to it.
I am sorry, but you know the rules. we do have to wrap up. As you see today, and yeah, 4 folks on this panel, we like each other, respect each other, but our perspectives are diverse and inclusive as well. We still like each other, following today's discussion. So it is possible. Thank you, Downtown Rotary, for having us here today. And my closing question and challenge for this organization is, as you leave the room, think about what you can do. Think about what you can do to promote diversity, equity, and inclusion, not only at the club level, but also in your own individual lives. Thank you again.
Okay, so thank you so much. So for that panel, right, what was nice standing back here is to hear how quiet it was, which resonated with Chantel's activity in the poem about listening, right? So hopefully we were listening, digesting and taking, applying maybe to our own lives. And I really appreciated the sharing. It was very insightful, educational, also challenging, right? Which I think it should be. So I thank you for giving us this presentation on diversity, equity, inclusion. And at our district conference, we had a panel discussion, and Amy was at that time the interim executive director for Pendleton Place. And I just liked something that she had read and quoted. And she said, diversity is a fact, inclusion's a practice, and equity is the goal. And I think the inclusion part being a practice means we actively, right, have to participate. So again, just that reminder. So for today, chaotic in the beginning. Thank you for hanging in there with us. We'll figure out the food service. Might have to go back to serving ourselves if we can effectively continue to start around 12:05. So we will work on that, but appreciate your patience with us. Then also, new members, welcome. Anybody interested in Rotary, please seek us out and experience a Discovery Rotary meeting. That would be the first steps. We'd love to have you involved. Abigail, very inspiring, and there is a lot of work in the area of loneliness. I'll talk to you afterwards because I have a professor out in California that's his specialty, so it might be good to get you connected. But I think that idea of love and friendship, right, and building that is very critical. Chris, thanks for putting the panel together. It was awesome. So with that, I do have just 2 reminders, kind of impromptu, but tomorrow we're serving breakfast to Welcome Elementary. It's a school that's also a Title I school. It's being catered by Maple Street Biscuit Company. Basically, they're providing all the food. But if you'd like to come and to just welcome the teachers back to a new year, do the meet and greet, I'll be over there about 7:45 and launches at 8 o'clock. Please join us there. And then the school that we partnership with is Alexander Elementary. We're having a lunch for them. Also, service is all taken care of. So again, if you'd like to show up to there, it's 12:30 on Thursday, just to greet and welcome the teachers back during that lunchtime. That would very much be appreciated. And another ask for Alexander Elementary is just school supplies. So if you want to bring to the next meeting or drop off at the office, see Michelle. They just are asking for box tissues, hand sanitizer, Clorox wipes, and Expo markers. And we'll probably do another reminder about that. So with that, thank you for coming today. Really appreciate all of you being here. And our theme is serve to change lives, and that is what we're challenged to do. So with that, let's do our 4-way test. Papers on the table if you need it. Usually have it up here, and also the banner. So of the things we think, say, or do, is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned? Have a great afternoon.